Hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Be the Wolf. Today, we are going to talk about why you need to do the things that you need to do in your business. I'm here with Roger Pearson. And I want to lead first before I give you the floor, Roger, for you to tell us what it is that you do. I want to lead with a quote that you sent me by Napoleon Hill. And the quote says, "The missing link in all systems of education known in civilization today may be found in the failure of educational institutions to teach their students how to organize and use the knowledge they acquire." Now, that's a complicated, long statement, as opposed to I like to speak in really super simple language. So I just want to break that down and basically say that it is telling us that people teach you what to do, but they're not teaching you why or how to implement it or any of the foundational knowledge that you need to be able to adjust and pivot as you go for what is right for your business or whatever it is you're trying to do. So, on that note, Roger, hello, welcome.
Hello there. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're here and you're going to share some of your story with us today. But before we do that, why don't you tell us what it is that you do?
What I do currently do, I have two functions. Basically, I do small business support services. And this time of year, I'm usually sitting behind a tax desk helping small business people figure it all out and figure out the mistakes they made and educate them what they should be doing and why. The most important thing is why.
Yeah, and know that we're hitting into tax season right now. So thank you for sharing your time with us, because I'm sure you are super busy. Now, I know that you have been a serial entrepreneur in your life. I'm curious what it is about entrepreneurship that has continuously brought you back to owning your own business or trying to keep a business going. I know that you started when you were very young as a young entrepreneur, yes?
Yeah, I've had my first paper out when I was 14 and tried my first multi-level marketing company, which is when I was 20, which was a total mistake. I've probably tried a dozen different ones of those until I learned why they don't work, because nobody was going to tell me that. I've owned my own lawn care business, decided I didn't like doing that. Owned a custodial company for a while. You know, the thing about the businesses is I would just wander around and I would see an opportunity. And so I decided to take care of the opportunity, not really knowing what I need to know to do it properly. I was just kind of going with the flow and saying, okay, is my end result, but missing half the steps between to get there. I would get the end result, but it wouldn't be exactly profitable because I missed all the steps in between that would make a business profitable. And it's amazing. I spent 10 years managing restaurants, 4 years in supermarket management. And I could do the job, and I did the job very well. And people were very happy with me, but there was always something missing. I always had something missing because I wanted to be my own company. I guess it's a challenge. I don't know. It's just I always wanted my own company to be successful, to what I would call successful, And that's what I was searching for all my life. But I didn't have the background. And I really didn't start getting that background until I got into doing taxes back in 2003. And I started doing taxes for other small business people, and they would come to me with challenges, and I would have to figure those out. And in the process of figuring those out for other people, I began my education because I had somebody that I was responsible to help them be the best that they could be and not lose money needlessly. And when I started doing that, I started seeing all the mistakes that I made for 40 years. And it was amazing. If I had done that properly and with that background, or if I had done that with that set of knowledge I now have, I would have been much more successful at what I did. But I didn't know that because the school system doesn't teach business, which makes no sense to me at all because small business is the backbone of the entire economy in this country. And yet the educational system doesn't take that into account. Not even the college, not even college. College prepares business majors for the corporate world, not for small business.
Speaking to that, like I know a lot of people who went back to school and got their MBAs in business and still are failing in business.
Yes.
You know, one of the things that struck me in what you said is that you had made, let me start over. You had owned your own businesses and you got the outcome, but you weren't successful, you weren't profitable. So you saw the opportunity, you started the business, you filled the opportunity, but you weren't getting the success. And where that switched was when you went to do taxes for other people and you were helping small businesses figure out their problems and you were held accountable. So there is this place in entrepreneurship where I think this is something a lot of people struggle with is they have trouble doing it for themselves, but they can do it for other people because there's that accountability. And so I know you really wanted to make a business work and you had this entrepreneurial spirit because you kept doing it over and over and over again. And so what was it that kept making you try again with entrepreneurship?
You know, I've asked that question a lot of times to myself, and I really don't have a good answer. It's just something that inside of me that wanted to be that type of success. I don't have the type of personality that I'm a 9-to-5er that is satisfied with a corporate job. I always wanted to achieve. I suppose if I were to pick my favorite song, it would be Dream the Impossible Dream.
Mm.
That is my favorite song of all time because it so adequately expresses what my journey's been through life.
Yes. And one thing I also noticed about the entrepreneurial journey is sometimes, just as you said, you were missing a lot of these pieces. And sometimes we have to go back and pick up those pieces. And so for you, one of the ways to do that was by being held accountable to figure out other people's business problems. So there was something in a way holding you to the fire. And that made you start to see all the things that you were missing before when you were going it on your own. And you're right. Nobody really teaches you how to do this. Even when you work with mentors and business professionals and coaches, the better you get taught, the bigger the price point to entry is typically.
Yeah.
And so if you're somebody that's just starting out and you don't have a lot of money yet and you're looking for mentorship, you know, where do you get that? Where do you do the learning that will get you to the next level? I know that you're actually writing a book about some of this stuff, and we'll talk about that later. So for those of you out there who don't have a big pocketbook for that kind of high level entrepreneurship or teaching that can help you figure out these things, you'll be able to get access to Roger's book, and that will be supportive for you. So tell me more about the things that you didn't understand when you were running your own businesses unprofitably that you figured out through doing taxes and helping people with their problems.
I mean, I knew money come in and money went out, but did I really have a good financial system? Did I have projections? Did I know how to sit down and make a proper business plan? Absolutely not. I just, like so many other people that have come across my desk in the last 20 years, I just had an idea, went out and did it.
Right.
Without any plan or anything, and without any why. And I think when you mentioned that really is one of the most important things in a business. You have to have a why. And if
Yes.
you don't have a why, you're not going to succeed. Because if you don't have a why, there's just not the motivation there to truly succeed. You have to have the why. And the other thing is, of course, you have to educate yourself because nobody's going to do it. It's going to be your responsibility. And you talked about mentors and all these fancy courses and everything else. You can spend thousands and thousands of dollars on that if you want, but you don't have to. The knowledge is out there. It's just finding somebody that's going to provide it at a price point that you can afford, which is what I'm trying to do, because at the end of my days, I want to be able to look back and say, well, this is what happens when you get in your 70s. You start looking back. At the end of my days, I want to look back and say, how many lives have I improved over the course of mine? And if I can look at it, I can see that and be proud of all the people I've helped succeed. That's a remarkable thing in itself. I suppose that in itself is one of my whys.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, what is your why? But beyond that, is there another why for you? Why you have stayed in the tax helping small business world?
I just enjoy it. I enjoy helping people. I just enjoy it. And most of the things I tried in my life, I really didn't enjoy.
Mm.
But this, I enjoy it. And that's the other thing. If you're going to be in business for yourself, it has to be something you enjoy. It's just not something that's going to make you a living, something that's going to pay the bills. It can't be, it has to be more than that. It has to be something you do because you truly enjoy it, or you're not going to be truly successful. And I think a lot of people don't understand that. They get so hung up on, hey, I got to pay my bills, that they don't enjoy what they're doing. And they'll end up not succeeding in the long run unless that's there also.
Right. Well, you've got people like great athletes, or Kobe Bryant always said, you have to enjoy the process. So your day in and day out of your business, you need to enjoy, because you said it earlier, you talked about motivation. Having that why gives you that motivation. And so if you enjoy the process and you have the why, that's all you really need. So one of the things I work with business owners on a lot is removing the resistance to the things that they don't want to do. And you said this when we talked earlier. You talked about how people they'll just hire a CPA or a bookkeeper or a tax guy to do the things for that aspect of their business. And a lot of times people are doing this because they don't like keeping the books. I don't like keeping my books, but I don't have any resistance to doing it anymore. And I understand what all the pieces are and the levers. I understand why I need to do the things that I need to do. And so that makes a big difference. So tell us about why you don't want to just hire a bookkeeper or a CPA to do all of that stuff for you. Why is it that you need to know more before you actually just hire it out?
There's nothing wrong for doing it yourself, but once your business starts to succeed,
Yeah.
you need to be able to hire other people on your team to take care of things that just because you've got more important things to take care of as a strategic head of your business. And I probably use the most common example I use for people to try to make them understand this is if you owned a plumbing company and you went to hire a plumber for your plumbing company, would you interview them? Obviously, you'd have to interview them. But if you knew nothing about plumbing, how could you interview them? If you own a plumbing company and I take it you're a pretty good plumber at that point, and you're hiring somebody for your business, you're going to interview them. You're going to know if they know anything about plumbing or not. But you had to know about it first. And the same thing comes to hiring a CPA or a tax accountant, a tax professional, which don't have to be the same person, by the way. A lot of people assume that.
True.
You have to know about it. How do you know if they're doing a good job for you? How do you know if they have your best interest at heart?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I've corrected too many mistakes to know that a majority don't. It's a numbers game. I tell people If you're hiring a CPA and all they tell you is to drop the stuff off and I'll call you when it's done, run the other way because they don't care about your business.
Mm,
Because a proper CPA or accountant is going to sit down and they're going to have an interview with you, and you're going to have an interview with them to see if this is somebody that you really want to work with, and if they really know what they're talking about, if they really care about you or not. And the same thing if you're hiring somebody to do your taxes. When I help a small business person at the tax desk, I basically have to learn their business to be
right.
able to do the best job. I just can't throw the numbers out, blah, 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 blah. I mean, I could, but that's not doing the best job for them. So I know plumbing businesses and painting businesses and landscaping businesses. I've had to learn all of these businesses and how they run, which is very interesting, which is what helped me because investigating all of that showed me the mistakes I made in the past, which I can now help them, educate them to not make the same mistakes I did and give them a leg up so they're going to be more successful than I was at it.
Yeah.
So even though the schools may not teach people, I've taken it on myself because the other thing that I have found out that's really interesting, I think, over my life is that there's two things I really, really enjoy. And that's one of the hardest things to determine sometimes in your life because you
Yeah.
try so many things. There's two things I like is education and creativity. And so I find that I'm not going to be happy until I'm doing one of those two things or both of them at the same time. This is why I love to educate small business people that come. This is why I've written courses. This is why I'm writing books. This is why I'm doing the podcast, everything to educate people. All right. And of course, the other thing is creativity. And I have to have creativity to write books and to do
Right.
podcasts and do all of this. That's the creative part of me. And when I get to do both of those together, that's what I enjoy. And that's why that part is more successful.
Well, and that piece too, when you get to have the creativity and do those things that you like, again, we talked about having a business that you love. It gives you that inspiration to really want to work with the business owners so that they have the best outcome. You get to educate them. It's not just churn and burn, get the work done, get it in and out off my desk because you care. That gives you, in a way, a leg up because if somebody cares enough about their business to actually have an interview with their CPA, their person that's helping them, they're going to feel that from you.
Absolutely.
And I know one of the things my grandma always taught me, and she did well for herself. And she always said there are lawyers, there are CPAs, there are tax people that work for you, and then ones that work for themselves. And the ones who work for you are looking to make sure that you are getting the best possible scenario. And the ones who work for themselves, or maybe the government, or whatever the thing may be, they're looking to just get you in and out as quickly as possible. They don't actually care about making sure that you get really great results. So you always want to find somebody that's looking and invested in your results for whatever reason. For you, it's because you get lit up with the education and the creativity. And I'm sure because you got to see so many different businesses, what was working, what was not, now the foundation and the structure and the why the things work, that you're able to come up with more creative solutions than a lot of business mentors would be able to, because you understand the foundations of why each thing works.
That's correct. That's correct. The thing, small business people, I mean, they want to go out and they just want to work and they want to, do their thing. And they forget that if you don't build your business on a solid foundation, when the winds come along, the hurricane winds come along, it's going to blow down.
Right.
And the foundations are the legal structures that you put your business through. and how you organize your paperwork. I know everybody hates paperwork, but it's part of the thing. You have to know how to organize it properly so those people you hire have the data they need to help you. And of course, the third thing is tax structures, because these things, I call them the three pillars, because it's basically they all interact with each other. You change one, it's going to change the other two. And you have to know that's what builds your foundation, and you have to know that. Not only do you have to know the basic structure of it, you have to know when it's time to change it.
That's key for sure.
That's key, because you can start out as a sole proprietorship. When is the time that you need to change it to an S corporation or a C corporation? If you're going to business with somebody else, how do you properly set up a partnership? How do you write a partnership agreement? What happens if you decide to split up, which is what the partnership agreement, I call a partnership agreement a prenuptial, because it basically spells out what happens if you decide this isn't going to work out for the two of you. And I've seen a lot of fights because that wasn't in place. So you have to know these foundational elements. And it's the things people don't want to spend the time on.
Yeah, well, it's uncomfortable, especially when you're talking about partnership agreements, because then there's this, like, internally, people feel like, oh, what, you don't trust me, or you think this is the same thing in a prenup, right? Like, oh,
Yep.
you don't trust me. You think that I'm getting into this to just get out of it. No, you just set up the boundaries. Like, you always create the boundaries before there's a need for them, and when you can do it from a place of neutrality.
Right.
If you wait till somebody has crossed a boundary before you draw a boundary, there's going to be pushback. So that's very important. What are some other common mistakes that you see over and over again where people are losing money or setting themselves up for failure?
I think probably the biggest problems I have with people is getting them to organize the paperwork properly. It's just because there's a lot of deductions, like in the tax world, where you can look at it a couple different ways. You can make deductions this way. You can make deductions with that law. There's laws. The thing about what a lot of people don't realize about the tax laws in this world is that for every major law, there's an exception to it. And the good tax preparer is the one that knows the exceptions rather than the general rules. And that's what the big corporations do. A lot of people don't realize that's what the big corporations, they hire all these CPAs and accountants and enrolled agents and everything, because these people know all the exceptions, all the credits, all that fun stuff that Congress has written into the laws and the state legislatures. And they know how to manipulate it to save money for their clients. That's why they get paid the big bucks. But the same things can be done at a good tax. If you get a good tax professional, the same thing can be done at the small business level. Those credits are out there. They don't say C corporation only, although some of them only apply to that. But the same things can be used. It's just like I had a home chef. She was wildly successful the first year. She actually had a good bookkeeping system. I was very proud of her. And she came in, she made $100,000 of profit the first year. That is incredible for a small business. But she was going to owe $6,000 in taxes. And she came to me early enough in the year. I used some of these sections of the law to restructure her, and I wiped that out. They actually got a $2,000 refund because of that.
Wow.
And they were very happy with me, and I was happy with me because I was able to help this person and showed them how they restructured and everything and what they had to do, and they had to start the W-2s and so forth and so on. And she went out and did every single thing I told her. Boom. And she's continued to be very successful. And I was very proud of that. I love it when people actually listen to you. But on the other hand, I have other people that didn't. I had a guy that got a job selling energy futures many years ago, and he made $250,000 in commissions first year. He had no bookkeeping system. He was doing it as a sole proprietor, and he didn't keep a mileage log, even though he drove a 3-state area.
Wow.
And so I tried to recreate it as best I could, but I says, you're going to be audited. You don't run $250,000 through a Schedule C. You just don't do it. You need a corporate structure. Here's to do, blah, 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 blah. He came back the next year, and the only thing he'd done is open a business checking account, so he wasn't commingling funds anymore.
Oh, wow.
That's it. I said, okay, we'll do the best we can, but you're going to be audited again. And sure enough, 6 months after that, the audit letter started coming. It
Yeah.
cost him thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars because he wouldn't listen to me. So you get from one extreme to the other, which is interesting. You can't help everybody, but I get such a thrill when I can help somebody like that and educate them and get them to restructure it and go in the right direction and give them the knowledge they need to help themselves. And but that's why I do it.
And it always comes down to we individually as the entrepreneur has to take responsibility for our business. And so for him, you laid out everything that he needed to do, but he didn't do it.
No,
And I think you might know that story or that pattern because I seem to remember in our previous conversation that you said that people had told you what you needed to do in your early businesses, but you didn't always do them because you didn't fully understand why you needed to do them.
and that's true. That's true. I really didn't pay that much attention to it, I guess. I didn't understand the need. I was just doing my own thing because I didn't have a proper structure. And the other thing is, I don't think I had my why back then. I didn't have a
Mm,
why I was doing it. I was just
right.
doing it, but you got to make a living and make a little money to live on. I never lived extravagantly. As long as I had enough to pay the bills, it all really mattered to me. And but I didn't have a good why. And I think that was one of the biggest mistakes that I made because if you truly look at the truly successful people and the ones that are, well, not only successful but happy, they
Yeah.
have a fantastic why.
See,
And that's one thing I've learned the last decade or so also that I think is very, very important.
when you talk about you weren't really paying that much attention, and when we have the why, we understand why we need to pay attention. Because so often, again, yes, you're trying to pay your bills or you're trying to be successful so that for some people, till their deathbed, they're still trying to make their parents proud, even if their parents are long gone. These reasons aren't dynamic enough and don't come from you to create that balance between success and happiness. I think a lot of people are chasing success because they think it's going to get them something else that they think will make them happy. But you've got to find the happiness in your business. So, would you say that you said in the past you had trouble completing things? You would get only so far, get 90% there. And I mean, I know so many entrepreneurs and people across the board can totally relate to that. You get almost to the finish line and then you just don't take it that extra 10%. Would you say that not having the why was a big part of that?
I think it was a huge part of it. I was going through the motions and I was good at what I was doing,
Right.
but there was no why behind it. It was just, this is what I'm doing at the moment. And it seemed right at the moment. But
Yeah.
yeah, I would get to a certain point, I think. And then for some reason, it's just, well, I don't really enjoy what I'm doing.
That lack of enjoyment took away the motivation to
Yeah,
keep going.
completely, completely, completely.
Yeah, I think a lot of people can relate to that, especially serial entrepreneurs. I know a lot of people have done that with failed businesses and with successful businesses. They get just to a certain point, and it's usually kind of the same point every time. And then they just opt out. They'll sell the business or they'll just give up, whatever, depending on which stage of business they're in. Now, before we dive in, I want to talk again about some more tips that you might have. And I want to go over those three pillars again. But before that, can you tell us about the book and tell us about how specifically people can get connected with you?
Okay. Well, the book is actually going into the three pillars. I'm calling it Mastering business basics, the workbook. And I've made it so there's lines in there where you can make notes and everything as you're thinking, because I want not just to read a book, I want it to work with this book and make it your own, basically. And as you go through, find the things that apply to you, find the things that don't. So it's going to go through all the different legal formats and what the pros are and the cons are of each, and the things you need to think about when you make these decisions. And it goes through all the organizational stuff, including basis and depreciation and all the fun things that your accountant or should be talking, and tax professional should be talking to you about.
Yeah.
This is the other thing. I wrote this book from my experience over the last 2 decades of talking to people at the tax desk and the things that they need to think about and the things that they need to know about if they really want to be successful in their business. And of course, the third part goes into tax structure and how the tax structure of each of these legal formats determines their amount of profitability and their liability. So these are all structural things. And I think by the time you get through it and you really sit down, you make yourself some notes and things and highlights and things, you're going to have probably a better basic business education than you're going to find in any school system in this country.
That's amazing. And what I also am hearing and reading between the lines and picking up is that by reading this book, you will have a strong foundation of the knowledge you need to be able to hire the right tax professional and CPA for you.
Absolutely. This is what you need. This is the stuff you need to know to sit down and have an intelligent conversation with that type of professional.
And that's huge. And people think that it doesn't matter. Oh, well, my business is really small. We're not making that much money. But you want to get your systems in place before you get too big, because you don't want to have to scramble to try to get your stuff in place. You want to be able to look ahead and know, hey, when I hit this point, then I need to start thinking about restructuring, or I need to start thinking about changing the way I do things because it's going to save me a lot of money or help me get the leg up. A lot of people are either they're looking so far ahead and they're trying to plan for every possible thing that could go wrong that they're actually sabotaging themselves for where they're at now, or they're just scrambling to deal with right now and not looking ahead. There's some balance in between there. And I think reading your book is going to be very beneficial for people. I'm going to guess probably at every stage of business. Would you say?
I really think it is, because everything from a sole proprietorship up to a C corporation, you have things like, well, what if you're running an S corporation for tax reasons, and you decide, well, I want to take the company, I want to sell the company. Well, you don't want to sell the company as an S corporation because you have to sell every single part separately. You can't just sell the whole thing. So you have to convert it into an S corporation, take the S election out and turn it into a C corporation. Then you can sell the whole thing as one thing. There's little things you need to know like this if you're planning in the future, and you should always be planning in the future. Most people start as a sole proprietor. Well, at what point do you go to a better tax structure, which is the S corporation? It's really the only good one at the moment. And you need to know this. So you're thinking in the head, because if you learn the stuff that the other thing I have found and that's really interesting is even if you work as a manager for another company, okay, would you need to know this stuff? No, you got a nice bob. They tell you what to do, blah, 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 blah. But here's the thing. I think one of the reasons that anytime I went to work for somebody else, I'd always end up in a management position within a year. Boom. No matter where I started, because I knew business. I'd been out in the trenches. I understood what was going on, not as much as I should have, or I would have probably been more successful in that area, but I understood what's going on. So my advancements are better. So anybody that just wants to take the management track in another business, this is good for them to know, because knowing this, you'll see opportunities come along within that business journey with that company that you may be able to show them, well, if you did this, you could save some money or you can make some money here. And you can see the errors maybe that they're making. Well, you've made yourself much more valuable to that company. And the chances of your job security there have gone up. So it's just not, if no matter whether you're working for yourself or whether you're working for somebody else, if you're in any kind of management role, this is the type of information you need to know.
Yeah. And a lot of people, they really like going through the motions and just doing the things. Oh, somebody told me this is what I'm supposed to do. And a lot of teachers out there, I see this in a lot of coaches, a lot of business coaches. They can teach you some strategy that they learned from some other business guru, but they can't troubleshoot it for you. Not really, because they don't understand the why you need to do all of those things. And so I always talk about expanding your success zone, and your success zone allows you to get those insights that most people don't get, that the understanding is above their knowledge. And sure, yes, okay, it's about reading and getting the knowledge, but some things, when anything that's going to teach you why you need to be doing something is going to expand your success zone. So it's not necessarily learning another business strategy. It's about learning the fundamentals of why the business strategy works and why it's important and why it's useful. And a lot of people have resistance to actually doing that deeper work. They just want to follow the steps and make it work and be done with it. But I think as an entrepreneur, you've got to get curious about the why. And then going back to what you said before, you need to understand and have the motivation within you to go deeper and figure out that why. And that often comes from having your own why.
That's true. That's absolutely true.
So tell us the 3 pillars again.
The first pillar is knowing all the legal formats that your business can run under and what are the pros and cons of each, so that you know where you should be at any time in your business journey. The second is how to organize your paperwork. You just don't throw everything, you don't commingle funds, you don't throw everything in a basket or a box and just hope somebody else can sort the mess out at the end of the year. The primary reason you need to know how to organize your paperwork and have proper accounting systems is a good business person knows what their net profit is at any day of the year.
Yeah.
If you don't know what your net profit is year to date, you're not doing something right. You need to go back to school. And the third is the tax system. And the tax system in this country is one of the most complicated things I've ever seen in my life. And it constantly changes. And it's just not the rules, it's all the exceptions to the rules. And while I can show people what the basics are and how your legal structure and your organizational structure affects how much you pay in taxes, it's not all going to be there. That's why you need the professional for that when you get going. So it's all a system. It all works together. It really, really does.
Yeah, my tax people have always loved me. They're like, you're so organized. Which I take pride in, but I do it for my own peace of mind and for my own understanding, so I know and understand where everything is and what's going on in my world, in my business. Now, there's a lot of things you read online when you're trying to get your LLC or your S Corp or whatever it is, and they tell you the pros and cons of each. How is what you have in your book different from that typical stuff that's online?
What I've tried to do is to show how the different parts interact with each other.
That's big.
Because you change one part, it's going to change another part. And if you just study organizational structures, that's just, well, any good lawyer can do that. But can the lawyer tell you how it's going to affect your bottom line? Probably not. It just all works together. And that I think that's the thing that that bugged me for so many years that I didn't know. I didn't know how it worked together.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest problem that most small business people have. They have all these parts, but they don't know how to work together.
Well, and that's a huge thing because to make your business work, you have to understand how they work together. Like if you're talking about just a specific business strategy, you have step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. You understand why you need to do each step, but you also understand the bigger picture about why those things work together. We think about our whole body. We go to the doctor, we go to our primary care doctor, and they give us this general thing. They take our blood. They don't do very much. And then if we have a pain in our foot, they send us to a podiatrist. And if we have a thing going on with our heart, they send us to a cardiologist. But nobody's looking at, until you get into functional medicine, nobody's looking at how all the systems work together. And a lot of times with the body and with the business, there's one thing that is the symptom that you think is the problem. Like you think my foot is the problem, but if you look at like a Chinese medicine system, it could be my liver that's actually causing that foot problem. And so in business, you need to be able to see how the things work together so that you can properly troubleshoot and effectively optimize your strategies.
Absolutely. Before I get into all that in the book, the first chapter actually goes through self-examination. And it's on how to choose the right business for you. Because a lot of people, and it starts out with the premise is your dream business may not be a good thing to have your first business. So how to analyze what talents you have. What do you have on the plate? What do you have to start with? What do you bring to the game? How to analyze that. And maybe get your feet wet with a business that, well, if you're a plumber, you want your own plumbing business, that's fine. I mean, you already have a basis of talent there. But you have to examine the talents you have and what you want your dream job to be versus what you really have the talents for. So it goes into a self-examination of what is best for you, how to find mentors, how to find the information that you need to go about making these decisions, because that's really the starting point of the whole thing. So I made that the starting point of the book also, because it's a self-examination of you, your talents, and the places you can go to find the information you need. And I think that's even more important.
Absolutely. And that boils down to such a be the wolf thing is you want to do what's right for you. And sometimes you may need to do some stepping stones to get there, and that's okay. So as you said, your first business might not be your dream business, but if you understand where you're going and what is right for you, then you at least understand why you're doing maybe this first business.
Right.
So that you can have the foundation and the structure and the knowledge and the know-how to actually make your dream business work.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because you don't want to make you don't want to make a bunch of mistakes on your dream business, what you really want to do in life. Make your mistakes on something that you can walk away from and go do your dream job.
Or, you just reorganize your dream business into another version of your dream business. There's always a way. So everybody out there, sometimes you will go for a different business besides your dream business first. And that will be the right step for you. But maybe you took the leap to try your dream business right off the bat and it's messy and falling down and you're failing, and that's okay too. You can still find your way through. There is always a path.
Always.
Roger, what's the name of your book?
It's Mastering Business Basics, the workbook.
Mastering Business Basics, the workbooks. And it goes into the pillars, how they all intertwine together. And this gives you a big why about why you're doing all that stupid business stuff that most entrepreneurs don't like to do. So that is incredibly valuable. Roger, if somebody wants to work with you on a professional level, whether you be an advisor for them, or you're a CPA for them? How do they get in touch with you?
Well, my main website is seagulltechnologies.com. Seagull is spelled like the bird. There's a whole story behind that also. I actually wrote in the About section on the website, it actually has the story of the seagull and its journey throughout the years.
Okay, so it's Seagull.
Seagull Technologies, which is plural.com.
Okay, so open up the browsers, everybody, if you want to read the story about the seagull and anything else. Type in seagulltechnologies.com. And for the business owners out there who want some support in growing your business and having fun doing it, this is what we've been talking about so that you actually enjoy what you're doing. I've got a free guide out there for you. You can grab that at bethewolfgift.com. So the book is Business Mastery Work.
Mastering Business Basics.
Mastering Business Basics. Seagulltechnologies.com, and then bethewolfgift.com. Roger, I have one last question for you.
Okay.
The you who was struggling to make those businesses profitable, beyond the why, and beyond needing to understand the why the business things needed to work, what else did you need to understand to catapult you to fulfillment faster?
I think the biggest thing is that don't make it about yourself. Make it about the other person. Because the more you help other people succeed, the more you're going to succeed. That's just the rule of business.
Well,
that's the rule of life, actually.
And this is one thing that comes down to, people always say it's selfish to do your own thing. And I say that when you're doing your own things and utilizing your unique special gifts, that, and you're bringing what you have to offer to the world, that gives everybody the greatest gifts. So in that way, you are helping others. So you make it, you're living your passion. In your case, you're educating and you're being creative. So you're filling yourself up. And by doing that, you get to help other people. So it becomes this win-win cycle that explodes the success, the fulfillment, and the joy for everybody involved.
Absolutely.
I love it. Thank you so much, Roger, for sharing your knowledge, your insight, your experience with us. And for everybody out there, remember, when you unleash the power of you, humanity evolves. And we'll see you next time on Be the Wolf. Bye, everyone.